So psychological diagnoses come in and out of fashion. You'll remember years ago when everyone was being diagnosed as having multiple personality disorder. Do you remember that? MPD, and then ADD, and then ADHD, and soon everyone was bipolar. And it's not that to say that these things are not true. No, it's not to say that, but it is to say that they come in waves. And the disorder that we see today, much better. The disorder that we see today, all too commonly, is CDD, and it is pervasive and serious. So far evading effective treatment, CDD, curiosity deficit disorder, presents as both acute, as observed during the coma drama, and also chronic. Symptoms include tuning out information that conflicts with current beliefs, a blank stare, or hostile interpersonal style. The ability to redirect attention away from grossly obvious oddities. A stupor-like presence followed by spikes in anger when presented with 1, questions, and 2, logic. An uncanny knack for ignoring astonishing facts. And lastly, a physical expression, it's an olfactory compromise, the inability to notice things that don't pass the smell test. You see it all over, especially with pronounced in journalists. I am pleased to confirm that tonight's speaker has been screened and shows absolutely no signs of CDD. Ken is an attorney, science teacher, and 2-time New York Times best-selling author. Pretty impressive. He may be the country's most fearless writer on corruptions of our institutions. He's authored 4 books with Project Veritas whistleblowers, Google Leaks, with Zach Voorhees, Behind the Mask of Facebook with Ryan Hartwig. This was CNN with Carrie Porch, and The Diversity Con with David Johnson. He's best known as a co-author of the Plague series with Dr. Judy Mikovits and Dr. Francis Russetti. Kent received the dubious honor of being the only American writer banned by an entire continent, Australia, and perhaps he'll talk a little bit about that tonight. And he published Inside the Sony Hack just in time for the 10th anniversary of the hack of Sony Pictures, which nearly led to a war with North Korea. And adding to his incredible body of work, he's here tonight with his book, and by the way, cover recommendations by Dennis Prager, former Liberty Forum speaker, and Bobby Kennedy, who would be, we hope to add to our list. But in his new book, Twilight of the Shadow of Government, he does a deep dive into the history of the CIA, co-authored with Ken Shipp, a 17-year CIA officer who turned whistleblower against his former employer. I very much want to acknowledge Ken, upon whose experience this book is informed and inspired. He says that we are living at the 11th hour, 59-minute mark constitutionally, and has put himself significantly on the line to share that warning. We wish him the best and hope he will visit the forum one day. So please help me welcome one of Curiosity's and Truth's fiercest friends, Kent Heckenlively.
Hello, Liberty Forum. How you doing? All right, so the title of my talk is What's the Deal? CIA, History, and Mysteries. First of all, what's the deal with me? That's what you want to know first, right? I like to think that if there's one thing that defines me, it's that I'm intensely curious. That's it. I simply want to know things. I think it's important. I'm addicted to information. I've had it said that I have this great natural curiosity, and I consider it an enormous compliment. I've got this simple belief that the more you know about things, the less scary they are. And details matter. So it's not just a surface understanding, it's a deep dive. So a little bit about me. I've got a pretty good academic resume. I was a double major in English and political science at a small liberal arts college. I was my school's Rhodes Scholar candidate, which is an honor given to about 1,000 students a year. Didn't go that far, didn't get to Oxford. Went to law school, was on the Law Review as a writer and editor. I worked as an attorney for about 20 years with my dad. Switched to become a science teacher. I've published about 18 books, 500,000 copies sold, and as Jane had said, 2-time New York Times bestselling author. Now, what you came to hear about, the CIA. Let's start at the beginning. You really have to look at World War II and the intelligence agencies which existed then. So you had Army intelligence, Navy intelligence, and the Office of Special Services. The Office of Special Services was the forerunner to the CIA, okay? Now, who worked for the OSS? In order to understand our CIA today, you need to understand who those first employees of the OSS were. They were Wall Street bankers, lawyers, and graduates of the Ivy Leagues, okay? So that's how our intelligence agencies started. The initial head, for those of you who are familiar with history, know that it was William Wild Bill Donovan. But one of his most loyal employees was a young man named Allen Dulles. What's the deal with Allen Dulles? All right. Allen Dulles, we'll get there. Allen Dulles was part of a power duo with his brother, John Foster Dulles, who is Eisenhower's Secretary of State. Now, this is really important to understand. Prior to World War II, the Dulles brothers worked at Sullivan and Cromwell, a Wall Street law firm, which was instrumental in the rebuilding of Germany after World War I. Why is that important? Because they got to know a lot of the Germans who became powerful in Hitler's Germany. They were friends with them. They were buddies. They didn't think a war should come between them. And unlike Roosevelt, Allen Dulles thought there should be a negotiated settlement with Nazi Germany. And he tried to make this happen from his position in Switzerland. So Dulles was in charge of financial operations for the OSS, what was happening financially in Europe. In fact, Dulles held meetings with the representatives of the number 2 man in Germany, Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS. And if you read your history, you will know that Himmler was captured by Allied forces as he was on his way to surrender to Allen Dulles. And Allen Dulles thought that Himmler, even though he'd been head of the SS, should be the leader after Hitler. Okay. More about Allen Dulles. So, Dulles was the 5th director of the CIA. So some people make the mistake of thinking that he was not that important in the initial creation. But Truman put Dulles in charge of drafting the plan for creating the CIA. And Dulles is responsible for what is probably the main flaw of the CIA, which is the contention of our book, is that it was the first agency which combined intelligence gathering with offensive actions. Why is that important? Because you want somebody talking to your leader who is telling that leader what is true. And then you want to go to the next group of people to take action. Every other intelligence agency in the world does not have this arrangement. Intelligence gathering and offensive operations are separate. You don't have the same people doing those two jobs. Now, this new agency, who did Dulles go to recruit? The same people as they did with the OSS. Wall Street bankers, lawyers, Ivy League scholars, and members of the national media. Some of those recruits include names which may be familiar to you. William F. Buckley, Jr., founder of National Review. Richard Bissell, a Yale economics professor. Philip Graham, future owner of the Washington Post. Richard Mellon Schiaffi, heir to the Mellon banking oil and aluminum fortune. These are names that are very familiar to anybody who knows about mid-20th century America. Dulles ended up as head of the CIA from 1953 to 1961, fired by Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs disaster. Now, you may think, well, Kent, in writing a book about the CIA, isn't it difficult to figure out what's really going on? Because they're spies. They stay silent. No, they can't shut up. Okay? So, in putting this book together, I just went to the books written by these guys. Shortly before he served as head of the Warren Commission in 1963, Dulles wrote a book entitled The Craft of Intelligence, America's legendary spy master on the fundamentals of intelligence gathering for the free world. This is a pattern you find over and over again. These spooks can't shut up. All you have to do is find their books. In an ironic twist, his book argued that the First Amendment is something of a roadblock to the work of the intelligence agencies. And he suggested that there should be some kind of mutual arrangement between the media companies and the government as to what they're going to talk about. Did any of you hear John Kerry recently say that the First Amendment is kind of a roadblock? And Hillary Clinton saying that if they don't censor more, they lose total control. This shit's been going on for 70 years. The book also discusses, I just love this section, how to plant phony information in the press through unwitting sources. And he quotes the Chinese war strategist Sun Tzu. Any of this sounding familiar to you? Okay. Now, what's the deal with my co-author, Kevin Shipp? So, I'm the guy who is usually second on the books. And that's because I usually am paired with a whistleblower. Okay? So, I'm the one who knows how to tell the story. They've got the story to tell. What's the deal with Kevin Shipp? He's a 17-year CIA officer, 1985 to 2012, who served in all 4 directorates of the agency. In that time, he was a protective officer for the head of the CIA, William Casey, a counter-espionage investigator, chief of training for the CIA Federal Police Force, a supervisor of high-risk asset protection, and a polygraph examiner. He's the recipient of 2 CIA Meritorious Unit Citations, 3 Exceptional Performance Awards, and a medallion for overseas operations. We put all of this information, including pictures of him in his job, in the book. He turned whistleblower against the CIA when they placed him and his family in a house on a secret CIA base, which was contaminated with old munitions. On one day, his son came up to him with a mustard gas shell and said, "Daddy, what's this?" Well, we should probably move. Okay. Mysteries of the CIA. What's the deal with the CIA and the mob? So, most of us know about the CIA's alliance with the mafia to go after Castro, which resulted in gangsters Sam Giancana and Johnny Roselli being murdered before they could testify to Congress in 1977. But remember, I'm a curious guy. I'm going, 60s, CIA, mob. Is there a story behind that? Like, did they just knock on the Sam Giancana's door in Chicago and say, "Hey, want to go in business?" Well, the good thing is, if you read a lot, if you're curious, you find out there's a lot of information out there. And the CIA, or let me say, the intelligence agencies and the mob go back a long way. And it's a great story. It's a story that actually makes me respect the mob because they're smart. Okay, so it's 1942. The Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor. Nazi U-boats are prowling the Atlantic. And the Office of Naval Intelligence is terrified that the Nazis are going to start bombing our East Coast ports. Well, Lucky Luciano realizes this is an opportunity. So what does he do? And he reveals it in his autobiography, which you can get on Amazon. He describes how in 1942, the mob set fire to the largest liner in New York Harbor, the SS Normandy. It was blamed on Nazi saboteurs. And so what happened? Well, agents from the Office of Naval Intelligence showed up to Lucky's place of business and said, "Could you please help us protect the ports? And in return, we'll keep the unions quiet for you." "Oh, sure, we'll do that for you." Okay. It gets deeper. The mob worked with both naval intelligence and the Office of Strategic Services in the invasion of Sicily, as well as the invasion of Italy, reestablishing mafia networks in the country, because whatever you say about Mussolini, he got rid of the mob. What did U.S. intelligence do? We put those mobsters back in control in Sicily and Italy. In fact, the alliance between our intelligence agencies and the American mafia was so well known at that time that famed radio broadcaster Walter Winchell suggested that Lucky Luciano should receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. Starting to see the deal? And once you know the deal, it's not as scary. So, how about the CIA and drug running? We've heard that story. Well, it's an old story. And thanks to a little bit of government incompetence, it got its start. Well, when the CIA was first authorized in the summer of 1947, there was a problem. Congress didn't give it any money. So they didn't have a budget. Well, thankfully, a little bit before that, there was a guy, Colonel Paul Hellawell. He served in China after World War II, or during World War II and afterwards, as Chief of Special Operations for the Office of Strategic Services, to fight the Japanese and then to fight the communists. Hellawell observed that the nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek were selling opium to addicts in southern China in order to raise the money to fight the communists. And he thought that this was a nifty plan. And so, one of the first things the CIA did was they contracted with the mob to grow heroin in Sicily. It was processed by an Italian pharmaceutical company and then sold to the jazz clubs in Harlem. Okay. What did they do with that money? Well, I'm going to tell you about something you probably have never heard before. You probably have never heard of something called Operation Gladio. Okay, just a couple of you have. So Operation Gladio was publicly revealed in the 1980s. And if you were in Europe, you probably knew about it, but you probably didn't hear much about it here. So the fear was that the Soviets were going to invade Western Europe. So one of the first things that the CIA did was they wanted to fund arms and cash for stay-behind fighters in Western Europe. When the Soviets didn't invade, those Operation Gladio people didn't go away. They infiltrated themselves into European governments. And so that was the scandal of Operation Gladio, that they ended up, the CIA ended up controlling a lot of European politics because of that. So, drug running, starting with the jazz clubs in Harlem. Then you had Vietnam, allegations of the Golden Triangle. Same setup. Air America was the CIA's Air Force to get the drugs back here. During the 1980s, with Central America and the Iran-Contra affair, you had the CIA seeming to work with the drug cartels. And today, we've got this problem called fentanyl. And we have a southern border which is undefended. And we have drugs pouring across, harming 50 to 100,000 Americans a year. The question must be asked, are we in business with the cartels? I don't have evidence of that, but that is the only explanation which makes sense to me. All right. Now, what's the deal with the CIA and election interference? Well, we know what they do overseas. What have they done here? Well, it's been interesting because many commentators, like Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, are suggesting at least that since the Kennedy assassination in 1963, we really haven't been in control of our country. And when I first heard that, that was kind of a shocking thought to me. And I thought, gee, I was born in March of 1963. So that means maybe I only lived in a free country for 4 or 5 months. But then I thought, that didn't seem right. That seemed off. Because you don't go from 0 interference in a country to killing a president overnight. That's too much. Like a serial killer doesn't start with people. They start by torturing small animals. So I thought to myself, there has to be some intermediate steps in which the CIA inserted themselves into our democracy. And so I thought, well, how do I find that? And I went to probably an interesting place. I went to Eisenhower's military-industrial complex speech of January 1961. Now, for those of you who know that speech, it is remarkable. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, warning Americans that their democracy is at risk from a military-industrial complex. And I asked myself, what am I missing here? What made this guy so angry? And I thought, maybe I should take a look at the 1960 election, because something clearly angered the general. Here's the popular account of the 1960 election. Okay? Kennedy won because he looked better on TV than Nixon, who had a beard. Okay? 5 o'clock shadow. Or, if you're anti-Kennedy, it's because Kennedy patriarch Joe Kennedy paid a visit to Chicago gangster Sam Giancana to get the mob vote in Chicago. Both things may be true. I'm not saying they're not true. But when I looked at the 1960 election, I felt that it turned on two things. Two absolute lies that Kennedy told. The first was that there was a dangerous missile gap with the Soviet Union. So imagine, you're in 1960s America. You're terrified that Soviet nuclear missiles are going to hit you. You're puzzled because your president is the general who won World War II, but maybe he's just become too old and doddering and he didn't keep up. Okay, so lie number one, the missile gap. Lie number two, we had no plan to confront the communists in Cuba. So if you like Kennedy, you have a certain view of what happened. If you like Nixon, you have a certain view of what happened. But don't let that blind you to the truth that might be out there. Because when I looked into it, both lies came courtesy of the CIA. These were things that Kennedy was told in briefings. Okay? How embarrassing was it for Kennedy when he met with Eisenhower prior to the inauguration? Eisenhower told him that his claim that the Soviet Union had 100 nuclear-capable missiles, when in reality, they only probably had 3 or 4. He's told that by Eisenhower. In addition, the United States, so Soviet Union, 3 or 4 missiles capable of hitting the United States. United States had 300 or 400 nuclear missiles capable of striking the United States. Kennedy also didn't know that we had another trick up our sleeve, the Polaris submarine, which could launch nuclear missiles from a submarine. Nobody knew you could do that in 1960, but we had a couple of them prowling off the coast of the Soviet Union, okay? We were so far ahead of the Soviets. The U.S. also had active plans to contain Castro. So let's take a little closer look at Nixon. In our current history, hold on. In our current look at Nixon, we think, oh, he was one of Eisenhower's guys. He was pro-CIA. But actually, as Eisenhower's vice president, he saw what the CIA was like, and he didn't trust them. They knew that. He had contempt for their abilities. So, the question I raise is whether the CIA decided that Kennedy could be more easily hoodwinked. That is the first moment that I believe the CIA put their hands on the scales of American democracy. And it's interesting, you can go back and you can read, and you can actually read Alan Dulles apologizing for misinforming Kennedy about our nuclear capabilities. He did that in 1962. And so all you have to do is you have to read your history. And most of you know, after being lied to prior to the Bay of Pigs invasion, Kennedy vowed to shatter the CIA. All right. What's the deal with election interference today? Now, I don't go to wild conspiracy theories. I like to look at government documents. I believe that if you understand structure and systems, you can take effective action. So, what is the accepted history? In 1976 and 1977, the Church Committee revealed that the CIA had a decades-long program named Operation Mockingbird, in which more than 400 members of the media, including several Pulitzer Prize winners, were on the payroll of the CIA. Those names were never revealed to you, the public, and no member of the media or the CIA was ever prosecuted or lost their job. An executive order did go out saying that the CIA was prohibited from using journalists, but nobody was ever prosecuted. Nobody ever lost their job. And so if there's a law that never gets enforced, do you have a law at all? No, you don't. Well, let's go to 2016. On March 14th, 2016, President Obama signed Executive Order 13721, developing an integrated global engagement center to counter government-wide counterterrorism communications activities directed abroad and revoking Executive Order 13584. This was supposed to be directed against foreign terrorists and ISIS. It sounded great. I read the law. It seemed to protect the First Amendment. I read and I thought, oh, okay. And then came the addition. On December 23rd, 2016, Senators Rob Portman, a Republican, and Chris Murphy, a Democrat, announced a modification to the newly created Global Engagement Center. The U.S. was now authorized to counter disinformation supposedly originating from Russia, China, Iran, and other non-state actors. I still can't find a definition of what a non-state actor is. That could be you and me. That could be the Liberty Forum. Okay? The press release, this was great. I love it. I love actually doing the research because what you uncover is greater than your imagination could ever make up. Here's the press release from these senators. It proclaimed, the bill also creates a grant program for NGOs, think tanks, civil society, and other experts outside government who are engaged in counter-propaganda-related work. This means you can lie and get paid for it by the United States government. Now, when you look at it through that lens, when you understand your history, and you look at things like Russiagate and claims that the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation, does it become a little more clear to you that this is not new? This is what they have always been doing at some level. It's not that we're in a worse situation now. It's that we understand the situation that we're in. Okay. Reasons for hope and laughter. Lying is a collaborative act. I love this saying. You can either know your history or you can trust your government, but you can't do both. All right, so in working with my co-author, Kevin, the thing that I had first said to him when he told me that he wanted me to write this book with him is, what kind of trouble am I going to get in? And he said, nah, look, I was in charge of declassifying information. The only thing they can do is they can take the money that I make from this book and not the money you make from the book. Like, oh, okay. All right. I'm in then. So see, I'm not that brave. Okay. But one of the things that he'd said to me is he said, Ken, you have to understand CIA, FBI, they operate on fear. What do I mean by that? They come to your door. Hey, can we ask you a couple questions? Oh, sure. Come on in. No. There was recently a viral video. I don't know if you saw it. But this, just get a little drink. But this internet host had apparently made some posts, and some guys from the FBI showed up to ask him about his post. And he did this amazing thing. He got his camera and he filmed them coming up to his front door. And he said, what are your names? Tell me your names. And one guy says, oh, Officer Gonzalez. Officer what Gonzalez? And he wouldn't give it. And it was great because the guys, they weren't threatening. I mean, these were agents with kind of pot bellies and things. And they're like, sir, could you turn that off? We just want to ask you some questions. And he says, no, I'm an American and I can film you. You're on the street and you're asking me you're asking me questions which I think are illegal for you to ask me. And so I need your names. And I will not talk to you. But I want to get your names. And the guys got back into their car and drove away. That's what you need to do. General Michael Flynn is a hero, but he made a stupid mistake. 2 FBI agents sent by James Comey to ask him questions without his lawyer present, and because Michael Flynn was a good guy and said, sure, I'll talk to you, endured years of torture. Okay? We can't be like that. Here's why you need to laugh at them. Because it terrifies them. Everything they do is so you will have respect and fear for them. If you lose your fear of them, they have no power. If you know your history, you know that it's a relatively small number of people who have screwed things up. We talked about a couple things, Kevin and I, in putting this book together. And, it's great when you work with these experts because, like the average person, I got all these crazy ideas and I don't know if they're true or not. I want to talk to somebody who really knows things. And so one of the things I talked to Kevin about, and we discussed this a lot, was they intend to put us in a state of fear so it makes us more manageable. Okay? So they'll huff and they'll puff. And they think that makes them stronger. There's a statistic. So the most feared intelligence agency, probably in the world at the time, was the East German Stasi. Okay? Those of you who are old enough, you remember that. Okay. Well, as things started breaking down in Eastern Europe, they thought, what we need to do is we need to get more informers. So in a country of 16 million people, they had an estimated 500,000 to 2 million informers. Did that make them stronger? No, because these secret agencies only have power when they're in the dark. When they come out into the light, when James Clapper and John Brennan are pundits on CNN and we get to make fun of them, they're losing their power. So even though the intelligence agencies are huffing and puffing and trying to make you as scared as possible, the Berlin Wall still fell. Eastern Europe still became free. It fell because people started speaking the truth, poking fun at the lies, because tyrants don't like humor. Nazi Germany never produced any great comics. Neither did Soviet Russia. Okay. And living a life of joy. One of the things that I found out is that if you're in the CIA and you're doing this stuff, you're miserable. The rates of alcoholism, divorce, suicide, phenomenal. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to speak the truth. We need to live and be happy. We need to poke fun at the idiots in power. And the future will be ours. I don't know when that's going to happen. I can't tell you it's going to happen in 30 days, 2 years, 4 years, but I know it's inevitable because human beings want to live in truth and we want to live in peace. So, thank you for listening to me. I'm happy to sign your books.
Ken has worked with whistleblowers from industry and also from the government. So one of my questions while I was reading this book is, what's the difference between the whistleblower from the inside of industry and the whistleblower from the inside of government? And how do these people find you? And like, where do you meet? Is it an Italian restaurant with red booths and curtains, or do you meet on a park bench and have like a bag of information, or how does this work?
Okay, so first question. What unites these people? What unites these people is generally they are the most straight arrow kind of people. They are people who believed in their organization that they worked for. I think of Zach Voorhees that I wrote Google Leaks with. He loved the Google slogan, "Don't be evil." He thought that organizing the world's information would bring people together. When he found out that they were more interested in biasing and censoring information, that concerned him. Kevin Shipp was a true believer in the CIA. I mean, he was good friends with William Casey, who he was one of his bodyguards. So very close to the Casey family. And he ran afoul of the agency when he discovered that they were leaving agents unprotected overseas. And so that started a pattern of retaliation by the agency against him. So it really is, these are the true believers. That's what the whistleblowers are. How do they find me? They usually find me through my publisher, Tony Lyons, who calls me up wanting to get me into even more trouble.
Does he provide you with a food taster?
With what?
With a food taster.
No,
Taster,
he
taster,
has
whatever
not.
they call it. Okay.
But today I had my own bodyguard, Jose. Give some applause to Jose.
All
He kept me
props to
safe
Jose.
tonight.
We are always grateful to Jose and all the guys at Executive Shield, all Danny's guys. All right. Well, audience question. Can you speak about the relationship of Dulles and the British intelligence?
Wow, great question. I was talking to somebody really knowledgeable about this because I did some work writing about Jeffrey Epstein. And I didn't understand because Jeffrey Epstein was in America, but he was Jewish. His girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, was English. And so I was talking to this guy and I said, hey, I don't get this. Was it a CIA operation, or was it Israeli intelligence, or was it British? I don't understand. There's so many different groups here. Who's in control? And the guy said, Kent, at the top, they're all the same. U.S., British, and Israeli intelligence. They function as one. Will you sleep tonight?
No, I haven't slept since I read Ken's book, if you want to know the truth. It was great. I kept wanting to go back to it, though. A lot of times there are things you don't want to read. This you really did, because it reads like a spy thriller, but your life is not what you think it is.
But 349 references, okay, in a 360-page book. So thoroughly documented. Check all the sources.
Thoroughly documented. But I did find out that the CIA can come into your house, check it out, do things, and leave, and you would never know it.
Yeah.
Okay. You used to have a diagnosis to believe that.
Kevin turned whistleblower in 2010, and it's 2024, and he's really great because he takes a real lighthearted attitude, and he says, there's some good things about being under CIA surveillance. For example, when you get your mail, it's already opened. That's kind of nice. And then he'll say, You know, if somebody is tailing you and you're lost, you can stop them, ask them for directions.
It's pretty great. All right, I'm
laugh at them.
By the way, these are some of the best questions, Liberty Forma, I've ever seen, so thank you so much. I'm just going to shoot these at him because I want to get to as many as I can. So they want to know if the executives in Congress know about CIA and the drugs.
Well,
who knows what?
I sent 20 copies to the Freedom Caucus, so they're reading the book.
Good. Here's one. This is an interesting question. Who are the goons who sit behind Christopher Wray and the officials at the congressional hearings? He said there are about 6 of them, and at least 2 are always there. Who are those goons? Do you know them?
I do not personally know them.
Would you tell us if you did?
Yeah, sure. Don't I say everything?
Okay. Do you know anything about the gold that I believe that the CIA and the government got in the Philippines after World War II?
Yamato's treasure. Actually, there's a little section in this book from another book which suggests also that the way the CIA funded itself right at the beginning was by stealing some of that treasure. I do not have confirmation of that. I simply report what others have said.
Okay, so recently John Brennan has said he has an interest in geoengineering, which everybody has been denying. And Kevin says if the CIA is talking about it publicly, they have already done it. We're about to face Hurricane Milton. We just had another horrible one. Thoughts?
You know, that is one thing I have not researched, so I will not venture an opinion.
I respect that a lot. Okay. All right. Is Kamala Harris a CIA construct, in your opinion?
Great question. You know, one thing that I have not written about is I have not written about the role of sex in the CIA and the honeypots, and there is something there. I don't know what it is. I would not be surprised. Although with Kamala Harris, I would be more likely to believe that she is an empty vessel into which
a joyful
they can get her to do whatever she wants, whatever they want.
Yeah. I'm going to bite my tongue about Kamala Harris being a honeypot. Okay.
Well, she got Willie Brown.
It's hard to be a lady and a conservative these days. Please explain who wants what and why with Ukraine, in your opinion.
Gosh, it's not in this book. I'll just say my relatively uninformed opinion is that the best explanation I've heard is that when you look at the minerals and control of Ukrainian farmland, which was a breadbasket of Europe, take that along with the neocons who want to control the great land masses of Eurasia. I think that's what's going on, and people who want to sell a lot of arms.
Okay. What do you think of the role of Hollywood in promoting fear or our relationship with the FBI and the CIA?
Well, you'll be happy to know that the CIA and the FBI have their own Hollywood offices in which they collaborate with Hollywood in order to make sure that they're portrayed properly. So don't you worry your pretty little head. The CIA and FBI get proper representation in Hollywood.
Nice. Product placement, so to speak?
Well, you might want to read my book, Inside the Sony Hack, for an exploration of the possible role of the intelligence agencies in some of the films that we see.
Okay. So Robert Malone says that the Arab Spring was a good example of how effective the techniques are using social media that the CIA can be. And that was where the battleground of the kind of is the mind Do you have any thoughts on that? And what do you think they're going to do next?
So I agree 100% with Robert Malone that in this society, which purports to be a representative democracy, the art of propaganda is key. They need to convince you that what happens is right. Oh, did your side win? No, we lost by a little. Darn, we'll get them next time. Darn, next time. Oh, darn. Okay, so be your own thinker. If something doesn't sound right to you, doesn't smell right, investigate it. Don't just go off half-cocked, have an opinion. Have an informed opinion, but get informed.
CIA and the NSA can shut down any case against it they don't like using the state secret privilege.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. Well, state secrets privilege, so that was basically the base of Kevin's break with the agency. They put his family and him on a house which was over a toxic waste dump. They all got terribly ill. He sought to sue them. He was happy to conceal all sorts of information, just wanted to get his family taken care of. And in fact, the lawyers for CIA had negotiated a settlement that Kevin was ready to sign, basically in 2004 or 5, for approximately $400,000 at the time, and medical care for his family. So the lawyers at CIA had negotiated the settlement, and he was fine to be quiet for the rest of his life. But the upper management at CIA, George Tenet at the time, and a guy named Buzzy Krongard, supposedly nixed it. And they said, no, we're not going to give him $400,000 to help take care of his very sick family. You know, they got to take half that or a quarter of that. And, you know, then things fell apart. And here we are.
And here we are. So Kevin says the currency of the shadow government is fear, intimidation, secrecy. You've busted open the secrecy with this book, for sure. But he says that the currency of the deep state is different, that it's money, power, and greed. Can you name several people in the deep state that should be prosecuted? You asked it.
Gosh, the list is so long.
Just use initials?
Shorter list of who shouldn't be prosecuted. No, you know, you write these books and you get a certain perspective. And I don't know if it's a warped perspective, but when I look at rich, powerful people who get fantastic press, so Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, you know, or people like George Soros or Alexander Soros who are doing a lot and never get interviewed, never get asked questions. I tend to subscribe to the black hole theory, which is whenever there's something that is missing, I'm suspicious. So we know that George and Alexander Soros are pouring a lot of money into the Democratic Party, but have we ever seen them subjected to interviews, media, you know, interviews, go on, talk with bloggers? You know, Elon Musk is happy to talk to anybody. All these people, Peter Thiel. So it's I'm kind of a big transparency guy. So I really don't care what your political philosophy is. You come out and you try to convince me of it, hey, I'll give you a thumbs up. But if you're going to hide in the shadows, ain't that happy with you.
Okay, well, speaking of things in the shadows, a couple of questions I'm going to combine about sex trafficking.
Okay.
CIA involvement, judicial involvement, family court involvement. Do you know anything about that?
No, but those are subjects of my next books. So I'm working on that.
Well, we'll have to have you back to talk about that.
One book that I'm working on is tentatively titled Undocumented Minors. And it is the story of Tara Rodas, the Project Veritas whistleblower, who, when she revealed that the program to take care of undocumented minors was losing track of them, and some of them were being, she proved that some of them were being trafficked to cartel members. The number of children when we started that book was estimated to be 85,000. The most current estimate is 325,000. So there's some
children.
Yeah, there's something going on. So our Department of Homeland Security has lost track of over 325,000 children in our country. I can't tell you what's happening to every one of them, but I got my suspicions.
All right, let's talk about one of the elephants in the living room, and that is Trump.
Okay.
So, was he hoodwinked by the CIA?
Yes.
What can we do to help him not be taken down next time if he's in office by the CIA? Did they try to kill him and JFK?
Well, so I wrote a book called Presidential Takedown with Dr. Paul Alexander, who was the senior pandemic advisor on the COVID-19 task force. And many people read that book and say, Trump got taken. And I don't know if I can support him when I read how his instincts were good, how he had people telling him the right information, and he did the wrong thing during COVID. Other people say, well, no, this is evidence that he really did get hoodwinked. And I'm kind of, I'm agnostic on that question. I genuinely believe that he made some very terrible mistakes during his second term, or during his first term. If he has a second term and he fixes those mistakes, nobody will be happier than me.
Okay. You wrote that the government lies to us as a matter of procedure. Basically, that's what you presented in this book. So how does the average person digest that? Because what you experience after reading this is that, you know, pretty much our world is a lie, a lot of our history is a lie. It's pretty deeply unsettling.
You know, for those of you who know me, you know I've been a very enthusiastic supporter of Robert Kennedy Jr. And so one of the things that he had said is he remembered being young and his father telling him that people in authority lie, okay? And that this, you know, America was founded on skepticism, for God's sakes. I mean, so this should be in our DNA. We should not say, just because some government official says it, that we believe it. Americans are supposed to think for themselves. It is self-rule. That is a responsibility on you. You need to figure out whether you're being lied to. So I put the responsibility, I understand that question. They lie. Okay, got it. Now what are you going to do about it?
That's a really good and big and important question. What do you say to the person who's observing wrongdoing somewhere and considering being a whistleblower? Kent, what do you say to somebody like that? Because now you know the story pretty well of what happens.
So, I've heard people talk about whistleblowers, and I want to wring their neck. Because they'll say, oh, look, these people who are whistleblowers, they're looking to get a big payday. No, the life you have after you blow the whistle sucks. You will lose your job. You will lose many of your friends. You will lose many of your family. Okay? So, have a side gig ready, or have some money put away. Expect to be hated for a while. But what I have never heard from any of my whistleblowers is that they wished that they had done something different. Because we human beings, we're weird animals. We're social animals. We want everybody to like us. But at the same time, we have a conscience, we have a soul, and we know what right is and what is wrong. And if you choose the path of righteousness, you sleep so soundly at night, you are at peace, and this weird things happens because when you get the bullshit people out of your life because you stood up, you get better friends, okay? And you get a better life. It may be a poorer life, it's a better life. Every single one of my whistleblowers would never turn their back on what they did. And I say to them, like, you're driving an Uber now. Doesn't that suck? No. I can look myself in the mirror. And it inspires me, because I sometimes I feel like I wrestle with darkness so much. And when I work with these people who put themselves at risk, I just say, look, I'm doing nothing. I'm putting words on a page. You're the one who is having to live with what you have done, and the pain that it has caused, the people that you thought loved you, the people you thought you looked up to and admired, and they disappoint you so deeply, and yet they wouldn't have it any other way.
That's pretty inspiring. And speaking of quality of people, before you walk out of here tonight, please introduce yourself to someone that you don't know, because you're right, we do have better friends when we live in the truth. That's really true. I want to read a quote from the book. I believe there are more good people than bad. The end of the shadow government is already upon us. It's up to all of us to start an avalanche. Ken, in the book, you thanked your parents for teaching you both grace and courage. Indeed, you do have both, as well as talent and a great generosity of spirit, for which we are the beneficiary this evening. Thank you so much for being with us. Kent's book, by the way, is going to be on sale, and he's given us a big fat discount. This book doesn't actually get released till a week from tonight, so we have pre-release copies. The only way you can get that book right now is to go to an airport. So we're super lucky tonight, and I am deeply grateful for you being here tonight, Kent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching our presentation. Please like and subscribe to our channel to get updates on new speakers, and consider joining the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley. You can do so at our website. If you don't want to join, but want to support the principles of American liberty, you can make a tax-deductible donation via our website. The links are in the description. Thank you again, and stay free.